The dismantling of HMS Bristol may seem like a minor historical footnote, but to those of us who remember what it once symbolized, a shared sense of Western purpose, sacrifice, and unity, its fate mirrors a much deeper unraveling. That's why I developed a curious attachment to a Royal Navy White Ensign, once flown over HMS Bristol. This now dismantled Type 82 destroyer, the only one of its class, was launched in 1969 and served until 2020. The flag was a gift from British sailors to my American uncle during a Cold War NATO exercise. Years later, after the ship's final journey to a Turkish scrapyard, I passed the flag on to my daughter. To some, it might just be an old piece of cloth, but it represents an era when the United Kingdom, United States, and Canada stood firmly together, militarily, culturally, and morally. In 1982, HMS Bristol played a vital role in the Falklands War, helping to liberate a population from a military dictatorship. When HMS Coventry was sunk, the Bristol continued to serve in an air defense role and ultimately became the Royal Navy flagship before returning home. Throughout the conflict, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher had the full support of United States President Ronald Reagan. Back then, Western nations were not only strategic allies, but also cultural cousins. Our shared democratic values were non-negotiable. After her combat years, HMS Bristol became a training vessel. When she was finally retired, many hoped she would be preserved as a museum ship. Portsmouth City Councillor Gerald Vernon Jackson argued that the Royal Navy's historic dockyard lacked a large, modern gray ship to bridge the past with the present. But that vision was rejected. In June 2024, the UK Ministry of Defence sold the Bristol to a Turkish scrap company. She was quietly towed from Portsmouth to Aliaga for dismantling. Many in Atlantic Canada feel a personal connection to naval history. My grandfather served in the Royal Navy in the First World War. My father, in the Second World War, on Flower-class corvettes. My mother served ashore in the Women's Royal Canadian Naval Service. A decade after the war, my aunt married a U.S. Navy sailor. During Cold War visits to their home in Virginia, I often met NATO crews. On one occasion, my uncle, a chief petty officer on the USS California, hosted several petty officers from HMS Bristol. They offered us Courage Special Brew. We gave them an American-style barbecue. As thanks, they left the ensign. It was a simple act of camaraderie, yet from such acts, the bonds of alliance were made real. And they remind us that soldiers, sailors, and airmen once saw themselves as guardians of a shared civilization. Before my uncle died, he gave the ensign to me. When I heard of the Bristol's fate, I gave it to my daughter. That flag, once a symbol of pride and purpose, now feels like a relic from another world. Today, few under 40 would be stirred by such an heirloom. Our schools and universities no longer teach reverence for the past. Instead, they instill grievance, division, and identity politics. Young people are told their ancestors were oppressors and their history unworthy of respect. Meanwhile, the North Atlantic alliance that won 2 world wars and deterred Soviet aggression is weakening. British and Canadian defense forces have shrunk. The People's Republic of China now rivals U.S. military dominance. And what was once a network of shared commitment is dissolving into shallow, transactional diplomacy. Between the Second World War and the end of the 20th century, the US, Canada, and Great Britain forged one of history's most effective partnerships, rooted in democratic values, mutual sacrifice, and cultural continuity. We need more than nostalgia. Rebuilding what the HMS Bristol once represented means recovering the diplomatic customs, military cooperation, and moral confidence that made the West a force for freedom. That revival won't begin in a boardroom. It will begin in how we remember and honor the values we've carelessly left behind.